So, hey guys, today we want to talk about our ideal franchise candidates for somebody to buy a franchise and to become a franchisee of Moving You and Junkie. We want to talk about our ideal candidate and what would be important characteristics and past experiences, and probably most importantly, overall sort of attitude and beliefs, when it comes to being a Moving You and Junkie franchisee. So I think the biggest one that we're looking for, in terms of just basic experience is, management.
Yeah.
You definitely have to have some experience handling people because moving and junk removal is not a sit in your office or sit at home all day long looking at your computer type of job. It doesn't matter, even if you're going to be an absentee owner, if you're not going to be in the building that much, you still have to be interacting with people. So the biggest thing for us, I would say, don't you think, is probably making sure that you understand and have an idea of what it means to lead people, to manage people professionally, to have people under you, to deal with the issues that can come up, when you're dealing with different personalities that are involved in your organization working towards something.
For sure, and considering that we have a remote management model, meaning we don't have people in-house, I think the learning curve is just a little bit higher for someone who has zero management experience.
Right, yes.
So if you're going to start a business or a franchise that, like a ice cream place, you're in the building with all of your employees, all of your product. It's a central location, so you can just be there and see everything.
Right. You see the customer interaction. You can kind of interfere and make sure stuff is going as it should be.
You can learn on the fly better.
Right.
Whereas with moving and junk removal specifically, or home services in general, all your crews are out on the road.
Right.
So even if you train someone really well in-house and they have a good personality, then they leave and you have no idea, if you have no experience before, of what really to expect or what you can assume that the employee is going to do out in the field.
Right, yeah.
So having any general management experience at least helps you understand expectations from employees.
Yeah, at least you have an idea of what could happen and what might happen and how you have to handle things. And yeah, I guess we're always kind of playing catch up, right? Like we find out about the customer experience afterwards. So we're just trying to work to make sure we provide the best experience we can, but we can't. You can't be on top of everything, especially when you're talking about multiple trucks, multiple crews, multiple jobs. You're just trying to do the best you can to breed that culture. And that kind of ties into my next point is you have to, if you're going to an ideal candidate for us is somebody that has, is aligned with our core values. So professionalism, our three core values are professionalism, POMO, which stands for positive momentum, and also having a solutions-based attitude. So basically,
That's a big one.
Being positive about how you go about your work. And then the third one is grit, which is, stands for get ready, it's time. And, kind of like the name implies, grit, it means that you're willing to do things sometimes even when they're difficult, because moving and junk removal aren't always the easiest services to provide. People are stressed out. So you have to kind of be aligned with those core values. And a big one, I think, in terms of culture is really, none is more important than the other, but maybe the first one that we look at is this person a solutions-based, positive person overall, especially when it comes to their professional attitude. Because if you don't have that, you're going to struggle, because moving and junk removal are just situations you're dealing with customers that aren't always perfect. They're getting divorced, they're having issues. Sometimes it's good, sometimes they're happy, but just in general, the situations are stressful. So you have to be willing to, deal with those stresses and still be positive about your overall attitude, in terms of the business. So to breed that culture, our candidates and who we're looking for has to have that super positive attitude and make sure that they focus on that even when things aren't always perfect and customers are, again, they're just at a stressed out point. So they're maybe not the best version of themselves, and they can take that out on the people around them, and we happen to be around in those situations, right?
For sure. So what would you say to somebody who has experience in a home service industry, but on the labor side of things, like they're more of technician? What would you say would be the biggest aspects to the skills that will transfer over well, and some skills that they're definitely going to have to develop knowingly going into this?
Yeah, I would say that the big one that's going to transfer over is your customer service skills. I mean, that's kind of, generic, but I think it's the right answer. You have to understand how to handle somebody that's not overly happy with what's going on, right? Or they don't think everything was perfect, right? Because no matter what you do, if you do enough business, somebody's not going to love what you do. It's just how it works. It doesn't matter if you do everything. Sometimes you can do everything right and people are still not happy. And just in general, you're not going to do everything right every time. I don't care how good your systems are. We're talking about people doing things. So everything's not going to be perfect. So that would be a big one for somebody that's transitioning, is to be have those customer service skills, because they become amplified when you're not the one in the customer's face, right? So it's more important when you have to be the manager that comes in, you have to have exquisite customer service skills, because you're not the one actually on the job. So there's none of that intimate feel. You have to kind of build that relationship on the fly, maybe after something happened that you had no control over. So that would be one. Customer service would be one that you want to transfer over. Another skill to develop is probably the ability to properly manage and lead. And what I mean by that is, when you're in the truck, you're doing the work, you have the ability to say, hey guys, kind of follow me and do what I'm doing. You can kind of lead by example, and that's still important to lead by example. But what you have to do, more importantly, when you're not in the truck, I think, is focus on kind of building the systems in the business and following them so that things go well in general. So you kind of build that culture, for your employees remotely, because you can't be the one saying, oh, I'll just fix things, I'll just make things good. You have to try to set things up so that there's as little problems as possible, because otherwise you're just going to run into issues, I think. So that's a huge skill to develop. If you've been on the truck and you've been used to being the one solving the problems, you have to try to kind of see around the corners, so to say. That's what we like to say, right?
100%.
Is make sure you see, oh, this could be an issue, so let me get ahead of it. Let me talk to the customer. Let me prep my guys. Let me make sure everything is all set up as best as I can so that things can go and execute. It's kind of like transitioning from being a player to a coach.
Yes.
Like if you're playing, you have the ability to, not only, of course, impact the game, which is important, like you can impact the actual work, you have the ability to lead sort of from the front, right? You have the ability to say, oh, I'm doing it too, right? Come on, guys, get on my back. Or when you're coaching, of course you're involved, but you're not the one taking the hits. You're not the one getting tackled. So you have to lead a different way. You have to, see around the corner so that you can anticipate those things that are going to come up, as opposed to when you're actually out there. So those would be my biggest focus if I was transitioning, and is important for our candidates. We try to impart in our current franchisees, and for, future franchisees, that you have to think about those things, when you're going to be running a home service business, especially like ours.
Yeah, I would say that the skill that someone who's already in a home service business has, that they can leverage, is the fact that they know that things just don't go according to plan.
Right.
So I think any home service in general, you get there as a technician, you get there, and sometimes it's easy breezy and it's exactly what you're hoping it was going to be, but more than likely there's something on
that isn't exactly right.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I say that somebody who has that experience understands that, versus someone who comes from, say, corporate America, and they've never really, their problems are more bigger, where you have a team working on it and it's a long-term play, and if something's not working out, like, yeah, that gets passed off to this person and they fix it. But when you are actually
and you're maybe not working with someone intimately, like their stuff, you're working with a company's things and the budget for whatever, it may be a little bit different.
When you're in somebody's house and the customer is watching you do the work on their stuff or on their house, whatever it may be, it could be painting, you understand that sometimes the ladder just doesn't reach the top, and now you got to kind of figure it out,
right?
Yeah. So that would be the skill that I'd say they bring in.
I like that. The ladder doesn't reach the top.
Yeah.
That's
going to be an analogy that we
that's a good one.
That's
yeah. But go ahead.
And then the skill that I would say you would have to develop is more your altruism. And what I mean by that is, as a technician, you understand on the job, you try your hardest, and there's some things that just don't go right. And if you are a good hard worker, some of those things are out of your control, and you understand that. But being able to hear two sides of a story and kind of dissect what is probably the case of what happened, what might have been a problem, what might have been an expectation that the customer had that we didn't fulfill, whatever it is, being able to differentiate a situational problem versus an issue in your business, if that makes sense. Whether it be a training issue, like I said, what you're saying on the phone, whatever the case may be, being able to read between the lines and really get down to what the problem is in that situation.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's kind of another thing for us to really impart on our ideal franchisees and our ideal candidates, and I think for home services in general. But if you want to be a professional business, that's one of our core values, is professionalism. It's kind of taking what you're saying, where you have to look at things as, your goal is to fix issues. But what I have found with a lot of home service owners and managers, or just people, in that kind of space in general, is they sort of play this game of, emotional back and forth where, oh, this guy's good, and then something goes wrong. They hear a bad story from a customer and they go, oh, geez, now he stinks because he was mean, or I heard that he said this or this happened, and it's a lot different than maybe if you're, working at a store, because you can see all the interactions, so you can easily know right away, okay, this happened, this didn't happen. So you kind of have to, interpolate, like you said, what you think happened, and the best way to do that is to stay professional. And what I mean is try to run things more on a holistic approach. So look at the numbers, right? Be more logical, be more analytical about what you do. So, instead of thinking, wow, and this happens to any business owner, but especially I think in particular in my experience, home service, when things don't feel like they're going well, or you hear some complaints, you start thinking everything stinks. And then you start making decisions based on that fact. And then if you would look at the actual data of maybe complaints, or what the specific complaints are, or who they are, you would actually realize, wait, it's either one or two people that aren't listening to what I'm saying, or even worse sometimes is that it's one or two people that aren't good at a few things. And if I just focused on fixing those things, we would have a lot less complaints. Or maybe it's one small thing that you're doing or not doing that needs to be focused on, as opposed to saying, I got to fix the whole business, because, it's very visceral and emotional for us as the owners or us as the managers, especially because it's so visceral from our customers, because we're so hands-on. This is not, a professional consulting thing that they completely forget about when they go to the next meeting. This is their life. This is their stuff. This is their home, whatever aspect it is. So you have to be professional about understanding that just because there's a complaint with one person, or you've had one complaint or a few, that doesn't mean the whole thing is going badly. You have to treat it as, more of a thought of a business, of the analytics behind it, if that makes sense.
For sure. Yeah. And what would you say for someone coming out of corporate America? What are the biggest differences that you'll experience? Because I think not a lot, but a decent percentage of people who buy into franchises have amounted some money from either a job or inheritance, but let's assume that they're coming from corporate America. What are some of the things that you would advise them to look out for?
I would advise them probably to look out for the things that also make it awesome. And I think that's how most, businesses are. What's exciting is that it's not stuffy. It's not, a big, giant, rigid, bureaucratic corporate system politics, where no one cares, and, it's really not their money. It's really not their problem. That's awesome. You get a chance to really do things and work with people that you can really develop, and, and work with people's problems that really are helpful. You're really helping them move. You're really eliminating clutter or whatever those things are that they need done. But the flip side of that is that when there's issues, it's very personal for them. So looking out for it's a lot more nitty gritty and just personal, the way people treat these things. When they're upset, they're really upset with you. They feel like you wronged them. Not that you were mean or you did the bad thing for the company and now they lost money and their boss is mad at them. I mean, they feel as though you wronged them and their family and their stuff personally. So they're upset, and sometimes rightfully so, and sometimes not rightfully so. So you have to be ready for, hey, I'm going to get more pushback than what I'm used to if I'm not used to working with the general public every single day, and not everyone in the general public is in a good place or of sound mind. So you have to be empathetic to that too. So you're gonna deal with some people that are a little bit, off, and there's gonna be issues.
Yep.
Wouldn't you say that's a big one to think about? Is just how different the issues are. They're very visceral to people, as opposed to maybe more of a business to business relationship.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously it would depend on where you came from, but I think a lot of people in corporate America are extremely not used to being the last line of defense.
Of course.
So similar to what you're saying, but in corporate America, it's always, the system's being slow, or this department needs to get this over to me, or let me transfer you over to here because they're going to be able to help. When you own your own business, you are all of that.
Right.
So whenever there's any question that can't be answered, any problem that can't be solved, you are the person that they're going to.
Yes.
So I would just say, being able to confidently, take that on as you make the transition over is a big one, because if you're not ready for that, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that there's only doomy gloomy and that you're going to have to deal with problems all the time. That's the negative way to look at it. But if you aren't open, if you're naive to the fact that you are the last line of defense, it can take you by surprise, and all of a sudden it feels that way, that all I do is deal with problems. It's like, well, no, you are just the person who can solve the problems.
Right. You have the ability to solve all the problems.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I think that's true in business in general, but it's especially true for a home service, because again, they're just, the problems are so intimate that they're coming to you and they feel like you need to fix it, to really make everything right. And that's important, And then just in general, a business idea, I think the flip side of that too is when things go well, people may compliment you, but generally they feel as though it's the employees, which you may not be used to if in corporate America you got the benefit, right? You got the praise, like, oh, so-and-so in whatever department did a great job. No one says, oh, wow, Apple's great. They say, oh, well, that person did a good job. Of course, the company's fine, So now that you're the company, people tend not to send praise your way. They tend to send it to the employees, which is really you getting the praise too, because you're the one that set them up. But that's not who people thank. Mm-hmm. They don't say, good job, Mr. Owner, that you sent this good employee out. They say, wow, this employee did a great job, and that's how it should be, But it is different, being the last line of defense. So that's a great point. Yeah. So I mean, for our ideal candidates, I think being in those core values, being kind of set in not only how you feel about work in general, but how you want to feel, right? Like you want to feel that you're in a solutions-based attitude or in a positive area, and you create this positive culture, because if you're going to become a franchisee or a home service business owner in general, you're the one that has to set the tone. It really does start from the top, and especially in a smaller organization, it really reverberates very quickly. So if you have a negative owner or you have a negative manager, it's gonna turn. The customers are gonna feel it maybe that morning. If
Absolutely.
you're in a bad mood. So what else would you say is important for our ideal candidate? That we look for.
So I would say one thing that our ideal candidate needs to have is the ability to embrace the growth. Because especially if you're coming from like a corporate America type background, or even any time where you have a job, if you're coming from any area where you had a job before and now you're starting to own a business, you get integrated into a system that's already built. Right? So you don't have to worry about lead flow typically. You don't have to worry about having work to do. You just have to show up and do the work that's already been done for you. Yeah. And especially when you're first starting, being able to embrace that, it's a little more of a slow grow. I mean, it doesn't mean that it happens slowly, but the first week you might not be booked out. And the first month you might not be doing, what you were hoping to do, in your ideal mind. But knowing that in the beginning stages, you're developing that foundation so that you can have that full schedule later on in the year or next year, and embracing that growth period. Because a lot of times it can be a little nerve-wracking in the beginning when it's like, oh, well, I just thought that I was going to show up and there's going to be jobs, every single day, and all I had to do is just execute. It's like, no, you have to embrace that growth period. You have to use your slow time to go build those relationships. And when you don't have work, that's the time that you have to do the most, right? In terms of going out and lead genning, whether it's, making connections with local businesses or handing out flyers, whatever the case may be, using that downtime in the beginning to build.
Right. So having someone that sees the long term is huge for us. Yeah, that's true. And that's something we try to get in front of with somebody so that they understand it. And a lot of people just understand it anyway, but I think home service in general, but especially for our ideal candidate, right, like you said, is to understand the long term. Is that this isn't a one night thing. This isn't a 1 week thing. We may be a franchise with resources that we get to provide and benefits, but we can't just make a business out of nothing. If we could with no work, then we wouldn't need a franchisee. You know what I mean? Exactly. Truthfully, we need a passionate person that's going to drive the business. We have a lot of resources to help that person, but they are still the one that has to go do the work to actually get it done. And that's why they get the benefit of getting paid a lot more than at a job. You know what I mean? Because if you build that business, you can really exponentially increase your income, especially your income per hour, as opposed to if you're just working at a job that's paying a salary. So that's a great point. That's definitely what we're looking for. Yeah.
Awesome. And then one other thing I want to talk about is someone who's looking to start their own business. Typically, they're very confident. They believe that they're going to be the pioneer. So how would you weigh in coachability with an ideal candidate?
Yeah, it's huge. I think if you want to be a pioneer, like you said, then I don't think you should become a franchisee, or at least that shouldn't be your only thing or your end goal, because the benefit of a franchisor also, we should talk about the cons, right? The pros and cons. The cons are you are not able to do whatever you want. You can't decide next month, wow, there's really a lot of landscaping jobs that I'm getting, and then do landscaping at least not under our trademark, use our services and or use our the benefits of our call center. You're not going to be able to just change to that right away. Where if you're starting on your own and you want to build the greatest
handyman or general
handyman
service.
or general, contractor service in West Philadelphia of all time, you may want to not just stay in moving and junk removal, where we don't think that's the right path to go. It's certainly not for a franchisee. So, yeah, coachability is huge, because then if you're not super coachable, you're not going to take all the information that we're trying to give you. You're going to think you know the way. And the point of joining a franchise is that you get all the benefits of the things we've done wrong, right? Because we've already made those mistakes, because we were the ones that tried to do it and said that didn't work, and did something else and that did work, and then so on and so forth for every single process that we put in place. So yeah, being coachable is probably number one, besides feeling aligned with number two, besides feeling aligned with our values, right? Do you feel aligned with our values, and are you willing to say, hey, what this franchise system is giving me, I'm going to try to execute? Because if you do that, then you're going to get the results that we're looking for. And if not, you may get, who knows, you may get better results, and that's great, but you also may not get the results that, we're looking for. So yeah, being coachable is a huge one if you're trying to be a franchisee in general, but certainly with us.
Yeah, and then in terms of joining a franchise network that is smaller like ours versus a more established franchise concept, what do you think those types of people would be looking for versus if they were looking for us versus someone else?
Yeah, I think that it's like kind of like we were talking about before, but it's just a different spectrum, right? So you have to be coachable and willing to listen to us, but if you're going to join us as opposed to, say, McDonald's, then you're going to have to be willing to be a little bit more flexible. And it's not the same as working for someone, but just like if you work for a smaller company as opposed to a very large corporation, there's just going to be less rigidity, which is great because it's more flexible, but it also means you have to have more of a self-starter attitude. And that's true for the franchise space as well. I think we have a lot of resources for an emerging brand, but we don't know everything. Neither do the very large organization franchise systems, but they certainly have more figured out than we do, which for a lot of people I think would be appealing, because you have the advantage of being in something new without having to start completely from scratch. So somebody looking between those two, I think that would be a good way to think about it, is how much do you want to be involved with not only the growth of your own brand or your own unit, but also the growth of the brand itself, right? Having influence. So if you want that influence, you should go with us. If you're looking, hey, I just want to make sure it's established and they have systems that I follow exactly to the T, and I don't want to have any influence on where maybe it should go, then, you should go with someone else, don't you think?
Yeah, I was going to say to really, obviously with your whole experience of buying a franchise, if you want to have a great relationship with the people who are the most passionate about the business, a smaller franchise network is the way to go.
For sure.
Because if you join our network today, you're going to have more direct access to the founders, being you and I, than you will if you join McDonald's. Right. You're never going to talk to the CEO of McDonald's.
Right.
I don't care how good your franchise. Maybe for the top 5 in the world, you're going to get a call, but you're never going to have that experience. If you have a question, you're going to have to talk to the area developer, the area manager, whatever the position's called. And again, that's just an employee who's not going to care as much as the person who's driving the ship.
Yeah,
but that doesn't necessarily mean it's just a positive. Like you said, if you want something that you's literally turnkey, good to go.
Yeah, if you put a McDonald's somewhere, it's likely going to work.
Yes.
As much as, we really are passionate about our business, we aren't as likely to work as McDonald's. Just the truth, right? They have a more established brand than us, which is, our goal is maybe to get there one day. But, for now, they certainly have a brand that far and exceeds ours. So you have the advantage of piggybacking onto a large brand like that, where with us, you don't have that. But like you said, the other side of that is, again, maybe not the same, but you have some element of that bureaucracy above you, not the same as working for a large corporation like that, but it's a little bit different than if you're working with us and you have a chance to, have our direct numbers and text us, say, hey, I have a question about this, or I was thinking this, and this, we're going to hear that out where somebody at a large organization.
Yeah. Or why did you make the policy this way? Why do we do things like this? Whereas you might get like a corporate response from a bigger brand. Right. You're going to have, listen, we had this one job and we did this. And because of that,
exactly
now
what we did.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So, and some people, I think, really, our current franchisees and the ones we're talking to think that that's great. And a lot of people say, no, I don't want to do that. I want to invest in something that has a lot of establishment and there's a lot of brand power and, millions and millions and millions of dollars being spent on advertising for the past 20 years before. If that's what you're looking for, then you shouldn't join us, and that's great. and you're probably just as likely to be successful. But I think more importantly, just like you said, kind of not exactly the same thing, but coachability is sort of self-awareness.
Yep.
Which one do you fit in? And be honest. I think it's better to be on. Obviously, it's better to be honest with yourself, but it's better to think really deeply about that and talk to a lot of different franchisors and figure out, okay, which one do I really feel like I'd be more comfortable with, and really ask those questions. Hey, how much support am I going to get? Am I going to get to talk to you? Will I get your number? Will I know the founders? We'll ask those questions, because if that's really important to you, then, you may want to think about doing something different than just the larger ones.
Yeah, another way to put that is, what's your day-to-day going to look like?
Right, yeah.
Your day-to-day when you're working, or if you buy a franchise for a bigger brand, is you're just reading the book and executing, and then if you have a question, maybe you get answered today, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah.
But your day-to-day with a smaller brand, it's like you have just more direct access.
For sure, yeah.
So,
and even if you have a support person that you have great access to, it's just a support person. It's someone on the team.
Yes.
It's not, again, like you said, the founder. So I think, I think it's a spectrum to understand where, kind of along the fully matured, super large, mega franchise system, all the way down to, a very small emerging franchise like us. I think that's people, you want to think about which one makes the most sense for you.
Definitely.
So yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think, in general, in terms of an ideal candidate too, is you also have to be flexible if you want to be with an emerging brand like us, because McDonald's, if they're going to change something also, it's going to be a long time. They're probably going to ask for your feedback. Not that we wouldn't want to talk to our franchisees, but we are changing rapidly. So there is also an element of, hey, there may be some shifts that you have to be willing to roll with. But the advantage is that you also, like we said, have influence over that. So
definitely.
For sure. Yeah. Anything else you can think of for an ideal candidate that we're looking for?
No, I don't think so. I think the big things are, just to start from the bottom up, is first deciding whether you want to be a pioneer or if you want to do your own business with support. That's the first one.
Right.
Secondly is, do you want the rigidity of a system that's been, forged, or the flexibility of a new brand that's constantly
improving. You have some
improving.
influence on, and you can kind of mold or have some ability to.
Yep. And with that being said, I think it boils down to studying your options if you're looking for a franchise, and knowing that literally not one is created equally, and finding a brand that really meshes with your personality.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think that's a big one. My core values are a big one, and vision. Make sure that you just feel aligned with them.
Exactly.
I think that's probably the most important thing, actually. Above all else, if you at least are there, the rest you can kind of decide on. And even if you get it wrong, it's probably going to be
you're falling in the right direction.
Yeah. You're gonna have a favorable outcome even in the end, even if that wasn't the one that you decided to own for 50 years and retire on. Mm-hmm. I think you can't really go wrong if you say, hey, these people and this company matches what I believe and what I see and desire. And even if the details are wrong, you can probably figure it out. So for sure, yeah. So that's give everybody an idea of our ideal candidate. And if you guys have any questions or want to reach out, feel free to go to our website, movingyouJunkYou.com, both the letter U, and we can talk to you then.
Until next time.